Old Guy That Lived on My Street Was Watching Me by u/Buddhist_H. For the longest time, there was this man that would sit in his garage and watch me. He was an older man and he was very scrawny. He had patchy gray hair and a super gross beard. I never learned his name, so we can all call him Nick. He looked like a Nick to me. I moved into my classic suburban home before I was even born. I've been living here my whole life, and the first memory that I have with Nick was when I was 10, and he gave me a small 2-finger wave as I walked back home after school. I had to see him every day since my bus stop was a few houses down, and I walked like a block to get home. My mom said that he would drop by after I was born, knock on the door in the middle of the day, and rang the doorbell until someone answered. My mom finally answered, my 1-year-old brother attached to her leg and newborn me in her arms. She said his face lit up when he saw me. He smiled brightly and asked to hold me. She obviously denied, 'cause who the hell comes to your house to hold your child when you don't even know them in the slightest? She said he scowled at her before calmly walking back to sit in his garage to smoke a cigar. After my first encounter with Nick, I never stopped seeing him. Every single day after school, every morning before school, and every time that I took my dogs out for a walk, every time that I peeked out of my window at 3 a.m. I swear, this guy never slept. I told my brother how it freaked me out, and he said he was probably on house arrest and that was the only way he could get out. We learned that wasn't true when he knocked on our door. Small background for this bit. My mom is very weak. She has an autoimmune disease, and her legs or her feet will go numb randomly. She's doing a lot better now, but this event happened when she was pretty bad. She insisted that she would take the dogs out alone, and I didn't want to argue, so I sat in the living room. After about a minute, I hear a knock. I yell out that the door's unlocked, thinking that it's my mom. But there's a louder knock. I get up, go to the door, I open it, and there he is, smiling at me. "Hey, hun, your mom fell off the porch. You might want to help her," Nick states, giving me goosebumps. His voice was unreal, so raspy and sounded like he was in the process of choking. He leaves very quickly, and I hurry to help my mom off the grass, calling my younger brother to get the 2 dogs inside. I gave her the "I told you so" speech, and she grumbled about it for weeks. My younger dog, a pit bull, made of 98% muscle, got excited when she saw a bird. She pulled to get the bird and yanked my mom off the porch, and she was standing behind a pot and tripped over it on her way down, making the fall hurt a lot more. She had a black eye and her legs were scratched up to hell and back, and the pot of flowers that she tripped over was smashed, but she was okay otherwise. Flash forward to my 13th birthday, and my mom's in the hospital, so my dad goes all out, letting me invite a shit ton of friends over for a sleepover, making us dinner and breakfast, and just letting me have an amazing time. There's a park across my suburb that I walk over to sometimes. I decided that I wanted to take my friends there to chill before their parents pick them up. The night before, we were looking out the window and giggling about the man. I know, it's shitty, but he was creepy and we were 13, so they knew he was weird. I told them to ignore him if he talked to them, but I didn't take my own advice. "Hey, Rosie," he said it so quietly. I barely heard him. My name is Rose, and Rosie is a nickname that my grandfather often used. I never told this guy my name, neither did any of my family members. Hi, I replied, and my friends all scowled at me knowing that I fucked up. How's your mom? She's fine. I go to leave. Before I pause, how do you know my name? You told me, remember? No, I don't, because it didn't happen, but I wanted to get away, so I agreed. Oh, right. I chuckle. Me and my friends scurry off to the park, and the next day, there's a box of chocolates sitting on the porch, a note with Rosie and chicken scratch writing on top of it. I pick it up, I look over at the guy, and he waves, and I can see that his left hand has disappeared into his pants. Gross. I leave the box out there and tell my dad. The next morning, me and my dad take our dogs out. No man, and I figured that he gave up after he saw me reject his chocolates. After a few weeks later, a large family moves into the house, and I hadn't seen a trace of the man until yesterday. I'm 15 now, and the woman who lives in the guy's house came over yesterday. Does a Rosie live here? She asked. I had answered the door, and my heart drops at the nickname from this stranger. Yeah, why? She hands me an envelope with my full name written on it. The guy who lived in the house before us said to give Rosie this on her birthday. It's not Rosie's birthday. I was trying to pretend that I'm not Rosie. Oh, well, I just took a guess. He didn't give us a date. Have a good day. My dad opened an envelope wearing a mask, and I quote, what if he filled it with cocaine? The note inside just said, love you. In his writing, red ink, my favorite color. So old guy that lived on the corner, let's not meet again. I don't love you, never have, and never will. Update. The man was arrested for child pornography. Nothing of me, thanks to the deities. Our local news went crazy about it, and last week, our suburb was flooded with new vans and shit. I'm just glad that he's gonna be in prison and not lurking around, stalking other girls. The Ford F-150 by u/Chaosis. This happened about 5 years ago. I was around 16 to 17 years old, and I always enjoyed walking. I would spend at least 1 hour a day walking the roads around where I lived. One day I was out doing my normal route, walking down my street that my house was on, taking a right out to the main street, and following it until I got to the end. There, I would cross the crosswalk and retrace my steps to go home. On this particular day, I was about 20 feet from where I would leave the main road on my journey back home. I had my headphones in, blasting music as always, which can be a bad habit as I am a young female that has been put in some sketchy situations while going for my walks. For example, men chasing me, following me, and etc. But since it was daylight, the roads were pretty busy, and I figured that I was safe. But man, was I ever off with that assumption? As I was about to pass the entrance of a side street before leaving this main road, a black Ford F-150 pulled up. He stopped and gestures for me to walk in front of him, so I do so. I was about to go on my merry way when I barely heard someone trying to talk to me. I turned down my music, taking out my headphones, as I looked to see the man in the black Ford, still stopped at the entrance of the side road. I looked at him puzzled, trying to figure out if he was talking to me, and I pointed at myself, and he grinned, nodding. What's a beautiful girl like you doing out here? He asked. I laughed awkwardly. Uh, walking? I replied, seeing as the answer should have been obvious. It's a beautiful day for that, he commented, just seeming to make small talk. Yeah, I stated, before going to turn around and continue my route home. Wait, the man called. I stopped and turned around, just trying to be polite. Even though the encounter was odd, I didn't see too many red flags yet. The man went off saying things as, "You're so beautiful. You know you have a really nice body. This hot weather is nice for a hot girl." I grew incredibly uncomfortable at this point, seeing as this man had to be in his mid-40s. He had a bit of a receding hairline with black hair, a nose with a protruding bridge, blue eyes that were surrounded by slight wrinkles, and was dressed in a dress shirt. So, I instantly brought up my age and saying, "I'm a minor." There has been multiple times that I have been mistaken for being older than I was, and I was hoping that saying this would get this fully grown adult-ass man to back off. But he didn't. That's okay. Come on, sweetheart, get in the truck. That's when I started panicking. Red flags shooting up everywhere. Stranger danger. I laughed nervously, looking at the cars around me to see if anyone was noticing what was happening, but nobody did. "No, that's fine. My house isn't far." "No, really. Get in the truck. I'll bring you home." "No." "Come on. Just get in here with me," he called as I turned and started walking away. I was hoping he'd just drive off somewhere else, but he didn't. Instead, he drove extremely slow, following me, complimenting me and trying to pressure me into his truck. I thought fast of multiple options for different scenarios, but I chose a simple one. I pulled my phone out while still walking, and I lifted it up to my ear, pretending to loudly answer a call. "Hey, Dad." "Yeah, no. I'm just on the street. I'll be home in about 10 minutes. I stopped pretending to listen to a reply. "Okay, you're outside waiting for me?" "Awesome. Yeah, we can do that when I get back. Love you." After he heard me say that, he took off, tires screeching. I ran back home and made it back within about 6 minutes, actually calling my dad on the way, who made a call to the police, who showed up shortly after and took my statement and description. Turns out, there was a man on the loose in my area who was exposing himself to minors and trying to pick them up for sexual acts. But they never actually found out who exactly it was. So, creepy man in the black Ford F-150, let's not meet again. Nearly Abducted While Abroad by U/Kman234. A couple years ago, I, 21-year-old female, was solo backpacking in France and made a day trip out to Versailles from Paris. You have to take 2 separate trains to both get out there and get back. I got on my first train heading back from Versailles, and my phone was at 3%, so I had it on airplane mode and low power. But I had my headphones in without anything playing to deter people from approaching me. John didn't care. He came over and sat beside me, speaking to me in French. I'd been walking around the gardens all day and wasn't really in the mood to entertain anyone. So, I pretended that I didn't understand French. He pulled out his phone and went on to Google Translate, asking if I wanted to learn French, and I responded with, "No, thank you," and went to put my headphones back in and appear even more uninterested since my body language wasn't enough for him. He continued to ask me questions through his phone, the next one being, "Where are you sleeping?" I lied and said that I was in a large hotel with my family and was heading back to them. He asked where it was and all I replied with was Paris. He then asked if I was getting off at a specific stop of the subway, which I said yes, to which is another lie, and he said that he would go with me. I immediately said no, and I ended the conversation. I got my headphones in and completely closed them off from talking to me, which prompted him to leave me alone for a couple minutes. He then got a phone call and said to his friend, "Yeah, I'll get off at X stop and you go to Y stop." This set off danger alarms in my head because Y stop is the actual stop that I was getting off at. We got to the transfer station and he got up and off the train and waited for me at the doors. I took my sweet-ass time getting up and making sure that I had everything, to the point that it was very obvious that I was doing it on purpose. He then left to get on the other train, and I slowly made my way off and to the next train. And I mean painfully slowly. I got on the train at the very front and was watching everyone around me to make sure that nobody was being suspicious or watching me, to the point that they all probably thought that I was on something. We got to X stop and I'm watching the people going off and coming on, as well as anyone on the platform, but I see no sign of him or anyone paying much attention to me. We get to stop Y, and I get off with the crowd, turn the corner, and he's there with 4 friends, scanning everyone coming out. I turned around so fast and went the exact opposite way, taking my hair out of my bun and trying to change my appearance as much as I possibly could. And as soon as I got out of the train station, I ran back to my hostel and refused to leave it, unless I was with one of my roommates. So, sorry you got outsmarted by a dumb blonde, but dude, let's never meet again. Older Gentleman Turns Out to Be a Wannabe Pedo by u/Magenta Stargazer. I was 23 when I started working full-time at everyone's favorite supermarket. I had struggled through over 3 years of college before deciding to get a full-time job, and had worked a trial full-time job for 6 months before becoming a greeter, a year before it was changed to something more serious. I looked younger than I am, and people have asked if I was still in high school or if I had a boyfriend. And I was ignorant enough to be used to those questions under a work environment. I also have anxiety, so I worried about customer service more than my own comfort zone most of the time in that position. I soon started to keep work journals detailing what I saw on a daily basis, or anything that I found suspicious, which came in handy for me, in my opinion. There was this older gentleman that needed to use an electric cart to get around in EFS that I help from time to time since I normally watch the secondary doors. He introduced himself as Al. He claimed to be in his 70s and required the electric cart because of all the smoking he did since his younger years. Al normally would strike up long conversations about his life after he was done shopping, and that he would stay at least another 5 or so minutes before leaving, including asking if I had a boyfriend, and at one time, making up scenarios of meeting a potential boyfriend. As stated before, I was used to hearing the boyfriend question, so much that I stick with saying, "I don't have a boyfriend and I'm not looking to find one anytime soon." Al took this as me lying to get out of the situation when I was telling the truth. I also overlooked a lot of what he said most of the time because it was normally loud when these conversations happened. He had a rasp to his voice, which was proof of the smoking information he told me, and I thought they were things that were the norm from his time. And as a retail worker, I felt it would have been rude if I ignored him, and it gave Al a reason to think that I was his friend. I didn't start seeing red flags about his behavior until late November of 2018, when he told me that I looked pretty and that he wouldn't imagine me naked. It made me feel uncomfortable, but I awkwardly thanked him for the compliment, and he went about his shopping before I documented it down. Red flag number 2 came a month later, the day after Christmas, and some time after my birthday. Earlier that day, I was talking to a fellow greeter, Tom, a male in his mid-50s, about when greeter Quinny would let us go on our breaks after a Mountain Dew spill when Al came in to do his shopping, and after he was done and I was helping him transfer groceries to a pushcart. He said he saw me talking to Tom in a monotone-sounding voice and left without going into a conversation. It was enough to scare me. Red flag number 3 came not even a week into the new year. Al came back to do shopping and tried to strike up a conversation with me after he was done, but noticed how I was trying to focus on my job more than him. This prompted him to ask if he made me uncomfortable, and I told Al that I didn't want to be rude, as I thought telling him would make him upset at that time. Al told me that he sees me as a friend and that whenever he comes in, he looks to see if I'm working because I'm the friendliest greeter compared to everyone else before he left. I could tell he wanted to put me at ease, but it did the opposite, as I found that I was right to be paranoid about him. I started to actively avoid Al if I ever saw him again and was alone at either door, acting like I was busy and having an assistant manager switch me and Quinny to different doors whenever the two of us worked alone in the morning. It worked for a month until greeter Nora came and gave Quinny her breaks when she wanted them. Come February, I'm gathering baskets when I spot Al at the register that sells tobacco, and he says hi to me, but I ignored him and I hurried away. I later asked one of my managers to use the restroom and hid in there until I couldn't hear him. Self-checkout host Dory had noticed how uncomfortable I was, as Al recounted that he thought he might have insulted me because he asked if I had a boyfriend. He then told her everything he was saying to me, and Dory understood why I was so uncomfortable. She later told me that Al was very vocal about me ignoring him until he left. I told 2 other coworkers as I was trying to catch up with my journaling as I had fallen behind in it, and they told me to escalate the situation to the head of loss prevention, Rebecca. I eventually did once, and I had 3 entries written down and marked as my evidence, and I told Rebecca what I had been doing to avoid Al. I was afraid to tell anyone in the management without any evidence, as I was worried that I'd be brushed off as an anxious worker. But Rebecca took me seriously and said that I was doing the right thing by avoiding him. Since my journaling included times and dates, I was able to give Rebecca the time frame Al was most commonly coming into the shop at that time, sometime between 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., closer to the end of the month and mainly Sundays. With that in mind, I was told to keep an eye out whenever Al came back in and to point him out to her or her team, as his actions could lead to sexual harassment of other customers as well. In March, I was surprised to see Al come in at a later time and act more professional around me, keeping things to hello and goodbye instead of trying to make a conversation. But even with a change of attitude, I still kept my guard up. Near the end of the month at around 6:50 at night, Al stated how nice the weather was and asked me if I could help him out to his car with his groceries so I could take the electric cart back inside. It's EFS policy that the electric carts stay inside to avoid any damage to them unless if the customer physically can't get to the store without heavy assistance. So I politely said that he had to use a push cart as the electric cart can't go outside and I'd get him one. Al was a bit insistent in taking the electric cart out and was halfway through the entryway, but I pushed the push cart close to the electric cart and politely insisted that the electric cart stay inside to avoid any damage from pebbles and dust that could get into the cart. Al relented at that reason, had his groceries put into the push cart, and left. I was relieved that the situation wasn't escalated, so I had to help him. But I did take note of his car should Al get an idea to try and follow me home. That was also the only time he ever asked me to help him outside. I eventually told Nora that I didn't feel comfortable around Al, and she said that I wasn't the only young woman that he had said these things to, as he had said things like this to other female workers at other EFS since Nora had transferred over from the west location in the city. A little over halfway into April, I switched over to cashiering and put together more information about Al's visits so I could try to avoid serving him by myself. Coming in around the time food stamps were replenished, and within the 7 to 10 days at the end of the month, mainly on Sundays and Fridays, and during the 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. and 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. time frames. Luckily enough, I didn't see Al after the switch. Even more coincidentally, at the start of May, I found an online article by the local newspaper with a picture of who looked to be Al in my Twitter timeline. I didn't want to get my assumptions up and had Nora look at the picture 2 days later. And to my shock, Nora confirmed it was Al. Reading the article revealed that Al had spilled gravy on his laptop and then took it into a Popular Electronics to get the files recovered when the IT people found what appeared to be illicit pictures of children during the recovery and then called the police. Al admitted to saving the photos and was able to describe what he saved and was arrested. The article also revealed that Al wasn't his real name and that he was really in his mid-50s and was from a nearby city in Iowa, which explained why he mainly came on the weekends. I told everyone that knew the story, and they were equally shocked, but also relieved. I did research on his state laws on the charges against Al a few days after his scheduled court appearance, and found that he was guaranteed at least 2 to 10 years in prison and immediate registration as a sex offender. In October, I decided to do more research as it had been months and found more articles confirming that Al copped a plea deal for 2 years and over $600 in fines for each account against him and was sentenced in September. I had switched to another position on the sales floor by the time I have found out about the sentencing. It's been over 2 years since then, and I have my old co-workers and Rebecca to thank for, giving me the fact and confidence that I do have the option to tell a customer no if I feel something isn't right. But I can't help but think about how badly things could have gotten if I had helped him out to his car and if he had other intentions in mind. It should also be noted that any electric cart policies are put in place not only to maintain the functionality of the cart, but to also protect the employees from injury or other harm at any store electric carts are provided, and I was lucky to enforce this policy when I did. Hello everyone, it's your creepy sister here. Thank you so much for watching the video. I really appreciate each and every one of you. But I would also like to thank my amazing patrons, my top tippers, and my dearest channel members. Thank you very, very much. I really appreciate it with all of my heart. If you want to support the channel further, you could also choose to become a patron, a tipper, or a channel member. But remember, it's appreciated, but never a requirement. I would also like to announce that we have merch now. The link is in the description of the video, along with all my other social media links, like my Discord server, Twitter, Instagram, and others. You can connect with me and send your stories there. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't yet, and comments are highly appreciated. And remember, your fear feeds me.